Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Baumhauer's Victory Grill here in Tuscaloosa, getting set for Saturday's matchup. Alabama and Mizzou, brought to you by Payless Drugs. We'll have the coverage starting at 3 with radio kickoff at 6 right here on many of these same Crimson Tide Sports Network stations. A pleasure now to be joined by a great broadcaster, a longtime quarterback, and a dear friend, I'm happy to say, Todd Blackledge. How many years now for you behind the microphone? It seems like I've been seeing you forever, and you're still so youthful.
Well, this will be my 30th season of calling college football games. So not all at ESPN and ABC and even CBS. I mean, I started out doing games for the Big East Television Network back in the early 90s, and have been doing it ever since. So been very blessed to have this kind of a career.
Do you like the game of football as you see it today, the way it's evolved?
Yeah, I do. I mean, obviously it's evolved in the sense of guys are bigger, stronger, faster. The athleticism is unbelievable. Quarterback play, guys are coming out of high school more ready to play and more trained, in the art of playing quarterback. So there's a lot to it that I really like. It's a little tougher for us as broadcasters with so many teams playing faster tempo and not huddling.
Yep.
You have to condense your thoughts a lot more than we used to, several years ago.
Visiting with Todd Blackledge, Nick Saban joins us in a moment on the Nick Saban Show, presented by Alpha Insurance. For auto, home, and life insurance, call Alpha. The coach is on a recruiting call, so far more important. Now, there's a surprise, huh? Here's
right.
Alabama. Alabama keeps restocking the National Football League every year, and they continue to have these, these gangbuster football teams. It's because of Coach Saban and his staff and their recruiting.
Yeah, I mean, that never ends, and obviously they've had to become creative with it, with not as many in-person visits or on-campus visits and everything. But, to me, that is one of the real trademarks of Coach Saban and his staff, is just that he is a relentless recruiter. And, he's had a lot of changes with his staff over the years, but, he kind of sets the tone from the recruiting standpoint. And, and success begets success. They've been successful on the field. They've been successful putting guys into the league. And so they can get in, and have a shot at just about anybody they're interested in.
Yeah. Hey, Todd, like you said before, this will be your third game of the season for you and Sean McDonough. How have the teams looked in general? Have they been a little rustier because of no spring and a kind of disjointed fall, or have they looked pretty good vis-a-vis previous seasons?
So the first game we did was Clemson at Wake Forest. And I would say Clemson offensively looked very sharp. Now, they've got Trevor Lawrence back. They've got Travis Etienne. They've got some receivers back. And really, Trevor Lawrence was the reason. I mean, he just looked like he was in total control of what they were doing. And so I was impressed with them offensively in the first half, particularly when most of their regulars were playing. A lot of other games that I've watched in these opening weeks, it seems like the defense was a little bit ahead of the offense, but I thought Clemson's offense looked very good. Now, last week, we were at Oklahoma State. It was Oklahoma State and Tulsa, and everybody expected a shootout and a high-scoring game, and it was very much a defensive game. And I think both offenses were a little bit, off the mark in that game. Now, Oklahoma State lost their starting quarterback the third possession of the game, and that changed things for them a lot. But that game was 7-3, heading into the fourth quarter. So it was a very low-scoring defensive battle.
Of course, the other gentleman after whom this show is named is now joining us, while Todd Blackledge is with us from his plush but not overly ostentatious hotel room in Columbia, Missouri. Coach Nick Saban joins us from home here in Tuscaloosa. Hello, Coach. Welcome in. Great to see you, sir.
Great to see you, Eli. Todd, how you doing?
I'm doing okay, man. How are you?
I'll come see you tomorrow.
We were just talking, Coach. This will be the third game that Todd and Sean McDonough have done this year. And we were just talking about the sharpness of the teams that they have seen because of no spring, a disjointed fall, and so on. How is your team coming together under your watchful eye?
Well, I'd be interested to know, Todd, what has your observations been? Because I've seen a few games or parts of a few games, parts of a few NFL games, but we've been a little busier since the games have started, so we haven't really seen a lot of games. What have you observed?
Well, like I was telling Eli, the first game we did was Clemson at Wake Forest, and obviously Clemson was a heavy favorite. And some of the other games that I had watched prior to that game, it kind of looked like the offenses were a little bit behind the defenses. But in that game, I thought Clemson looked very sharp offensively. I thought Trevor Lawrence had great command of what he wanted to do with the football, and they kind of had their way with Wake Forest, I thought, particularly in the first half of that game. Then last week, we had Tulsa and Oklahoma State, and it was very much a defensive football game. And I thought both defenses played extremely well. And the thing that really impressed me, I think, with both defenses was how well they tackled. I thought the tackling was really good in space on some, both teams had some kind of dangerous guys in space. And I thought both teams did a nice job tackling.
Well, I think that my observation of our team is it has been a little bit different in terms of the continuity on a day-to-day basis, not really having spring practice. And even in fall camp, we had like 25 practices over 40 days. Mm-hmm. All right, so you had a lot of days off. You really practiced 3 or 4 days a week. And the last couple of weeks, we tried to make it more like game week. But my observation has been the more experienced players have been able to deal with this, sort of uncertainty and not a normal routine a lot better than the younger players. Mm-hmm. So if you have an experienced team and you have guys that have played a lot, they seem to be able to adapt a lot better, to things like this, which would go to your point about, Clemson's quarterback, Trevor Lawrence. Yeah. Well, in the game, he's a very experienced and poised guy. So I think the biggest challenge has been the younger guys, the least experienced, the less experienced guys. And then the issue with continuity of, I guess this is the epitome of the old saying, you got to play the hand that's dealt you, because every day it changes. You got these guys out, somebody else is in there. So you don't have the same sort of rhythm and how you're trying to get ready for a game. But our guys have been really, really good, and they've done a really good job. We test every day, so they feel safe. We haven't had a lot of social tracing problems because we only have to do it for a short period of time because we are testing every day. We haven't had a lot of positive tests lately, knock on wood. So we don't have a lot of guys out, for the game. And even though the continuity in practice has not always been what we'd like for it to be, I think the players have shown a lot of maturity, and I think they're ready to play a game. I know they're excited about having to play a game. I think they respect the team that we're playing. They've got a very good defensive team. And we don't know for sure what they're going to do on offense. I know they have 2 very talented quarterbacks. But new coach, new staff, some unknowns for us. But I know our players are really, really excited about playing. And if you really respect your opponent, then, you should be bringing your A game every day, every play, because you just assume if you respect somebody that I'm playing against the best player I ever played against, so I'm going to go do the best I can to, try to win that matchup. So kind of unusual, but to answer your question, Eli.
Yes, sir.
I'm ready to play. It's time to see where we are. It's time to see who we are. And then after one game, we'll know what we need to do to try to get better.
Todd, why don't you jump in?
Yeah, so I'm curious about something, Coach. And you mentioned that you guys are testing every day and that your players feel safe about that. And obviously, that development was a big reason that the Big Ten and the Pac-12 now today have made a decision to kind of get back into playing because they have the wherewithal to do that. Do you know, are there other teams in the SEC that are doing that right now, or are you guys the only ones that are testing every day that you know of?
Well, a few days ago, I think we were the only ones that I knew of that was doing that. If other people have started that, I really not aware of it, so I really don't know.
Yeah,
we were testing 3 days a week,
right?
4, and most people were testing 2.
Okay.
And then we just said, hey, let's just test every day. It'll be a little better.
It's interesting to me too, Coach. And I mean, I grew up the son of a coach, and coaches have lots of cliches or sayings that they like to cling to, and one of them is always trying to get your team to believe in that next man up mentality. Whether it's with injuries, and it seems like this year that's even more the case because you have injuries still, but you also have, in some places, guys that have opted out for this season. You have guys that don't pass a test, so they can't make the trip. Tulsa had to leave a couple people behind. Clemson had to leave a couple of their main corners behind the first week. They don't know for sure if it was COVID or not, but you assume so. And so it seems like this year, even more than maybe any other year, that idea of guys being ready to step up and play and be accountable is even more important.
And I think that is very, very true. I think the more depth you have on the team, the more guys that you have that can win and play winning football. But I also think that, when you have young players, I think it's very difficult for some of them to realize the importance of learning how to prepare for a game when they don't know for sure if they're going to play. I think that's one of the, especially guys that are high profile guys, they were star players in high school. And now all of a sudden you're expecting me to go out here and really prepare to play in this game, but yet I might not get to play. But it's so important this year that they understand that because they're one practice away. You always say one play away from playing, but they could be one practice away. I mean, when we posted our travel squad, tonight, we had to put a supplemental list together of you guys have to be on call because if anybody has a positive test tomorrow, you have to be ready to take their place. All right. So it really runs deep in the roster. And where it really is important and impactful is on special teams.
Right.
And, somebody asked me the question yesterday on the SEC conference call that they've seen a lot of sloppy play on special teams or something. And I can understand why, because, all this stuff kind of rolls down the hill. All right. So if you move guys up as starters, you move the next guy in on special teams, then maybe those units get affected as much as anything.
Todd Blackledge from ESPN is with us. I'm Eli Gold. And Todd, one thing we do on a regular basis, every show, forever and ever, is we have the same gentleman join us with the first phone call of the night. It's kind of a tradition now. Our first phone call brought to you by Alabama 811. Always contact 811 before you dig. To know what's below, call 811 or visit al811.com. Pee Wee in Grand Bay, Alabama. Welcome to the show, sir. How are you?
I'm doing great, sir.
What's up, Pee Wee? Long time, man. No talk. What's going on?
Well, just still cleaning up a little bit from from Hurricane Sally last week, Coach. But other than that, I didn't know for sure if this day was going to come.
Yeah, well, we're excited about it. I know you are too, and I know you're going to ask me something about the offensive line. I just don't know what.
Well, it's not just that. I want to kind of play off a little bit of what y'all have been talking about. You mentioned the travel squad, about the amount of players that you're able to take on road trips. Would you just kind of explain to us, how that works for home games versus away games and the challenges of having to decide of what players that you take on the road with you during for the away games?
Well, we're allowed to take 70 players on an away game. We're allowed to have 80 players that can play in the game for a home game. And they say you can take 80 players to the hotel, which means those 80 players can play in the game. Now, you can dress more players than that, but they can't play in the game. All right, so those are the two limitations that we have. And as far as how we come up with the travel list is, basically special teams is a big part of it. If a guy's a core special teams player, even if he's not really in the too deep, you're going to take that player. We usually try to limit it to 4 specialists, a punter, a kicker, a snapper, have somebody else on the squad who can long snap in an emergency. And then maybe one other guy who can kick and punt, or maybe kick off, and sort of provide depth for the other specialist. Even though he may not be the second best guy on your squad, you just can't take a bunch of specialists. So that leaves 66 players. So we try to put a limitation on the number at each position. Sometimes it changes relative to injuries. Like, I want to take 11 offensive linemen, 5 running backs, at least 5 tight ends, at least 3 quarterbacks. Like to take 8 wide receivers or 9, 9 at least defensive linemen. We take like 13 linebackers, but they're all on special teams. And then I think we're taking maybe 10 or 11 defensive backs. So, but after the 2 deep, special teams becomes a big part of who gets to go and who doesn't. And, we always come up, a little short. You'd like to take a couple other guys that you feel like deserve to go, that might be able to contribute, that, can't go. But those guys will have an opportunity next week when we play at home.
Pee Wee, thanks for calling in. Coach, we have a question from the Nick Saban Show blog on AL.com. It's, again, part of the program this year. Will is in Daphne, Alabama. Says there seem to be a lot of freshmen who could see some playing time this weekend. Can you address the importance of the quality depth, and how good does a freshman have to be able to play early in the season? Thanks, Coach, and Roll Tide.
Well, I think we talked about some of this stuff before, but I think with most of the freshmen, I don't think there's any freshman that we recruited that's not talented enough to play. I think the biggest difference is what a guy's learning curve is. And a lot of that is psychological disposition to be able to take coaching, to learn, to not get frustrated when they make mistakes. There's so many guys now that, we live in such a result-oriented world. And, you've heard me say before, outcomes are distractions. You got to focus on what you need to do to get the outcome if you really want to be successful at anything you choose to do. And that's always called the process. Well, these guys come in with these high expectations of, they want to start and they want to play and they're going to catch 50 passes their freshman year or whatever. All right. And instead of being able to focus on what they have to do to be able to do that, they're frustrated and disappointed that it doesn't look like it's going to happen. So, and then they ask, why is it not happening? And it's really obvious that they're unable to stay focused on the things that they need to do to become a better player and understand the importance of developing the kind of habits in practice that are going to carry over to the game, and developing the trust with their teammates that this guy's going to go in the game and be able to do his job. So it all comes down to truth. I mean, can you believe the truth when somebody tells you the truth about yourself? All right, something that you do or you don't do. And if you're a player and you're a developing player and a coach is telling you the truth, whether it's good or whether it's bad, all right, the truth is something that can help you get better if you believe it, all right, and you're willing to try to do something about it. So I guess what I'm trying to say is the guys that have the right psychological disposition about getting better, never wasting a failing. So when they make a mistake, they get coached. Oh, that's not going to happen again. I learned something there. I'm going to get better because of it, rather than getting frustrated, shaking their head like they're disappointed that you're disappointed in them, even though you're not disappointed in them. You're just trying to coach them to do it.
Help them along
next time. So a lot of it is what is a guy's psychological disposition to be able to improve, all right? Because most of them all have the talent to play, all right? But it's just how long does it take them to develop to be able to play winning football and develop the trust of their teammates and the trust of the coaches that, hey, we can put you in here and we know you're going to do what you're supposed to do, whether it's block a punt, or block somebody on punt protection, run down as a gunner, cover the right lane on the kickoff, or play your position. I mean, it all is about, will you do what you're coached to do so we can trust you to be able to win the game and do it effectively.
And Todd, I'm guessing as great as you were, that a lot of this sounds familiar to you, and you were able to accept a lot of that critique and improve over the years.
Well, absolutely. And, it helped that I had a dad for a coach, who was a college coach. And so when I went to college, I had very realistic expectations. I didn't have any unrealistic goals, that when I went, and again, it's different now. It's much different now. But when I went, I was hoping to make the travel team my first year. And, just that was my main goal. And then I got hurt. And then I was competing for a starting job my sophomore year and went all the way to the Thursday of the week of the first game. And they made a decision. Coach Paterno made a decision to go with the other guy, Jeff Hostetler at the time. And we kind of both played through 3 games. And I didn't, really get my shot to start until the 4th game of my sophomore year. And it was actually here at Missouri. That was my very first start was here in Columbia against Missouri. And so this is my first time back here since then, since 1980. But I think you have to be that way. I mean, you have to be able to take coaching and to understand that they're trying to get you better, and there's great players all around you. You might have been a big fish in a small pond in high school, but it's a pretty big pond when you go to a place like Alabama.
Amen. You have another question for the coach, Todd?
Yeah, I do, because it's about a guy who's kind of on the other end of that spectrum. And I'm talking about Mac Jones. We had a chance to talk to him on the phone earlier this week, Coach. I was very impressed with him, and I like what I see when I watch him on film too. But here's a guy who's been in your program, or been on campus for 4 years. He's had a couple different coordinators, but he has waited his turn and obviously sat behind an incredibly talented guy, a couple guys. But that's got to be kind of rewarding too, to have a guy who sticks it out and who knows that if he keeps working and keeps improving, that he'll get a shot and get a chance to prove himself.
Well, and I think Mac's done a really good job of that. And one of the things that we always try to emphasize with Mac is don't look over your shoulder, look forward. And focus on the next play. Because sometimes he gets a little frustrated when he makes a mistake or maybe makes a bad throw, which those things are inevitable. Nobody's perfect. But he's really, really smart. He knows exactly what he's supposed to do. And I think that what we've tried to get him to do is just always be a forward thinker. Don't get affected by what happened on the last play. Focus on the next play, be positive about it, and just move forward. And he's learned how to do that a lot better. And I think it's really helped his consistency as a player. And we have a lot of confidence in him. And he's done a really good job, this fall camp.
Hey, Coach, it's not often we get to see inside your home. What are all the things on the credenza sitting there behind you?
Well, I really don't know because they're all new. I could have told you what used to be back there. But it's all new, and I didn't really look at it. But just looking at it through the camera, it looks a lot better.
Looks great. Yeah. Is that where you do your majority of your work? Is that your home office?
Well, I don't really, other than recruiting here, I do a lot of work. But when I do it, I sit in my lazy boy downstairs with the laptop and watch film, watch recruits, make evaluations. So this room is basically about doing Zoom calls, home visits basically that are Zoom calls, any kind of meetings that we have, all the Zooms that we did with the players when we were in lockdown, I did from here. So this is my Zoom room, I guess.
How easy has it been, or not, to get that connection, the warmth that you want to connect with mom and them and grandma, grandpa? let alone the recruit. How tough to do that through a screen?
You know, I think it's pretty real. I mean, me personally, I guess you'd have to ask them, you know, after we have some of these things, but I feel very comfortable, you know, talking to someone as if you're having a conversation like you're there. So I feel bad that they made it so these guys, they made recruiting dead period until January 1st, you know, for a lot of these players, which means if you're a mid-year guy, you don't even have an opportunity to visit. So I was hoping that maybe in 30 days or something like that, that they would open things up for November and December. So these guys at least have, you know, some opportunity to visit some places, but it doesn't look like that's going to happen. And so, I mean, we have 21 commitments now. Hopefully we can keep those guys. We could take, you know, I think 3 more guys, and a lot of good players left out there, but you can only do this. You can't do anything else. So that's how you have to try to develop relationships in all parts of your program, not just league, you know, with their position coach. You know, we have a virtual tour of everything that you could have: the training room, the new facilities, the academic center, the campus. I mean, you're recruiting by picture.
Sure. You've always been very graphic oriented too. When you walk through the Malmoore building, text is at a limit. There's graphics everywhere. That seems to be the way to get to young kids nowadays.
Well, I think a picture, you know, is worth 1,000 words, and we have a lot of good ones that we can put up there, and a lot of guys had a lot of success here. So I think it's a good thing for people to see that.
Definitely so. Eli Gold, Coach Nick Saban, and Todd Blackledge from ESPN. He'll be on the telecast with Sean McDonough on Saturday. Todd, jump right in again, sir.
Yeah, you know, Coach, one of the things I wanted to ask you about, one of my mantras that I've had for this season, once we realized we were going to come back to be able to work and cover college football, is that different is better than nothing. And, you know, there's a lot of things that are different for us, different for you guys. One of the biggest differences is the crowds or lack of crowds. When we did our first game at Wake Forest, they allowed 50 people in the stadium, and they were just parents. Now, last week at Oklahoma State, they could have 15% or 25%, and it was around 15,000, which was a big difference. But I think it's going to be similar here at Missouri on Saturday. How have you talked to your team about that, or addressed, you know, how different that might be, or you know, just what your perspective on that would be?
Well, you know, it's going to be a new experience, and I don't know that there's anything that you can actually say to prepare them for the fact that, other than this is the way it's going to be. And I think we can have like 20% fans, which will give us a little over 20,000 people. You know, when we play at home, I think is it 25% at Missouri or something. So it'll be a similar number.
The figure at Missouri is somewhere between 12,000 and 15,000 for this weekend.
Well, and you know, the only thing that I can go on is the games that I've watched. A couple of the NFL games, man, I thought the players were really playing hard and really competing like crazy, and there were no fans.
Yeah.
So what I've tried to, you know, tell our players is the spirit of the game is not going to be what it's been in the past. And I know how exciting that is for you, and I know how much as competitors we love to have that emotion and spirit, you know, around the game. And it's a great part of the game, and I can't wait till it comes back. All right, but if you're a competitor, all right, you're going to go out there and compete and win and play as hard as you can to create value for yourself by the way you play and you execute, because that's in your DNA. That's who you are. And I think it's important that, you know, players understand that they're going to be judged and evaluated, whether there's fans in the stands or not, in terms of how they play and how they compete. And Do you need an external factor to actually motivate you? I actually, told the players this week that, if you're a Mamba or you're a lion, you have a killer instinct and you're going to devour whatever is in front of you. It doesn't matter if you just ate something else or whatever. You don't have to be hungry to do it. All right, that's in their DNA. If you're a greyhound, they got to starve you to get you to chase the rabbit around the track. All right, so that's in their DNA. All right, so they have to have some external factor to get them to perform. So we shouldn't need that. What is our DNA? What is your DNA as a player? I mean, it should come from within you in terms of what you want to accomplish, what you want to do, who you want to be, what people are going to evaluate you and say about you, and how are you going to create value for your future has nothing to do with how many people are watching, even though it's a great part of the game. So that's kind of how I've tried to approach it with them. We'll see how it works.
Yeah.
I don't have any experience.
We'll all find out together. Coach, you got another question here from the Nick Saban Show blog on AL.com. Harrison from Florence, Alabama, wants to know, how much time did you guys spend preparing for the season opener against USC, only to throw that aside? And how did that present your staff with challenges in terms of preparing all of a sudden for Mizzou and later in the season, Kentucky?
Well, we spent a significant amount of time as a coaching staff. We always do on a new opponent, we do a complete, scouting report,
right,
with tendencies, cut-ups, the whole thing. And we do an off-season study. And then we sort of list the things that we probably need to practice against that may be something that's a little different than what we see, each day practicing against each other. All right, so we spent that time on, all of our new opponents, which was every team that we play. We do it to some degree, but for the teams that you play all the time, you have a history, of those teams. So you already have some built-in information, as long as there's not coaching changes, that you can sort of build on. But we didn't really have any opportunity to spend any time with the players doing this stuff. Because we didn't have spring practice. And if we would have had spring practice, we'd have spent some time practicing against USC, probably at least a part of a practice, things that were different that they do. So when we found out who we would play, we went right back and made sure we did the same thing in a short period of time on Missouri and on Kentucky. Now we have had an opportunity to take those things and work with our players on, during this prep time that we've had in these 25 practices over the last 40 days since August 17th, that we were allowed to practice 20 hours a week. We didn't have as much time as what we have with players in camp, but, we try to spread it out so that we maximize what time we had.
Sure. Coach, I'm guessing that if we talk to a lot of Bama fans, they probably know less about Mizzou than many other teams in the league because we just don't see them that often. But when you talk about guys like Tyler Beatty and Larry Roundtree, Nick Bolton, their outstanding weak side linebacker, this is not a team that has an empty cupboard. Coach Drinkwitz has some talent with which to work.
Well, I don't think there's any question about the fact that we have a lot of respect, for this team. I mean, I think they were 6-6 last year, but there was a time in the season where they were like 5-1. The defense is one of the top 15 in the country. They have, I think, 8 starters back from that group. They actually ranked higher in defense last year than we were. I know they have 2 very talented quarterbacks. One's a transfer from TCU. One's a young guy who played some last year. They have a good tailback. They have a very explosive guy in Beatty that you mentioned. They only have 1 receiver coming back, and they have a transfer. We don't know as much about some of those guys who might be playing. And the offensive line has like 3 starters back. And this was not a bad team at all last year. They lost a lot of close games, and Tennessee was 24-20 or something like that. That Tennessee just barely beat them. So this is a good football team. It's a good team in the SEC, and when you play good teams in the SEC, anybody can beat anybody, and these guys are capable of beating anybody. I promise you, they have enough good players to do that.
Hey, Coach, on the Nick Saban Show, we were joined earlier in the evening by Brad Bohannon, the baseball coach. They open up their practice tomorrow. Regretfully, practice closed to the public this year, but Brad should have himself an outstanding baseball team. Now, Coach Nick Saban and Todd Blackledge of ESPN. He'll be on the telecast this weekend from Mizzou for Alabama and the Missouri Tigers. Todd, jump back in with the coach, sir.
Yeah, I'm sure Alabama fans are excited to see this guy back on the field. We had a chance to talk to Dylan Moses on the phone earlier this week. Coach, how is he look in your eyes and just in terms of his progress and readiness to play at a high level at that linebacker position?
Well, I think the last 2 weeks, Dylan has looked like his old self. I think one of the things that I never realized about injured players until I had my hip replaced last year is sometimes you keep waiting for it to hurt, even when it doesn't hurt anymore. So I know when I used to golf, my hip would hurt a little bit. So when I got back to playing, I was waiting for it to hurt, and it never hurt anymore. So, and I think sometimes that's one of the biggest psychological hurdles that a player has to overcome when he's coming back from an injury. And in the last 2 weeks, I've seen Dylan sort of turn it loose and, go for it like he played in the past. Up until that time, I thought he played good, but I could tell he was still a little bit tentative. Not at all now. Very focused, been a good leader for, the team, has helped the guys. I think, with his experience and knowledge and ability to call things and make adjustments. So I think he's just as good as he ever was.
Yeah. I know it's still early. We've not played a game yet, but from a leadership standpoint, have certain guys already come to the forefront as being team leaders?
I think that we have good leadership on our team. We don't seem to have many guys who are not bought in to doing things the right way. And I kind of noticed that in every team, almost more what they do off the field and even what they do sometimes on the field. Because I think sometimes character and discipline can be created and judged by what you do off the field just as well as what you do on the field. And, we haven't had a lot of issues on this team. We probably have less issues academically. As you know, we check everybody's classes every day. And we have less guys that have less points than maybe we've ever had for a long time. We haven't had a lot of issues, discipline problems, or anything like that with the guys on the team. So I think that comes from having good leadership, but I also think it comes from having good people on your team and everybody's bought into trying to do something, together as a group. So I've been pleased with that part of our team. Now, whether we're as talented or as good as some of the teams we've had in the past, that has to remain to be seen.
Sure, that'll be proven as time goes. Coach, as we head back towards the top of the hour, our friends from Mercedes-Benz are back again this year, sponsoring your final word. Mercedes-Benz, the best or nothing.
Well, I think this is really a big opportunity for our players to sort of have a chance to develop an identity, as a team. What kind of competitive character do we have? How many guys do we have that are disciplined enough to go out there and do their job and focus on the right things and put the team first and create value for themselves, but also put the team first and make their choices and decisions based on winning. And it'll be interesting to see who we are, where we are as a team, and what we need to do to progress. And I'm excited about it. And I know these players are really excited about having the opportunity to play. They've been practicing for a long, long time. I mean, people don't realize that, they worked out all summer not knowing if they were going to play.
Sure.
We had a 10-day mini camp, basically, where we're allowed to have the players, 10 hours on the field, 10 hours in meetings, right before we started camp. And then we had this fall camp that has, sort of lasted for a long time before we ever played a game. So I think everybody's really excited about playing a game. So now it's a matter of how much do we know about what it takes to go out and execute and have the discipline to do that, play with the kind of toughness and intensity to sustain 60 minutes in the game and dominate the competition. And, that's what we're going to find out. And I'm excited to have these guys have an opportunity to do it after all the uncertainties, but and we're also excited to see what kind of team we can be.
Indeed so. And Todd Blackledge, always great to have you along, regardless of the fact that you have a son named Eli. That has nothing to do with it, but you and I have been friends for years, and it's great to see you. Look forward to seeing you in the press box this weekend.
Absolutely. You too, Eli. Thanks. See you on Saturday, Coach.
Yeah, Todd, I really appreciate, what you do. You're so fair. I love listening to your telecasts when you do them because you have a great insight in what's happening on the field, but you do it in a very positive way, and you're not really critical of, the people out there who are working so hard. They're not professionals. They're just young kids, and they're trying to get an education and trying to develop a career in some cases as football players. So I really appreciate the way you do what you do, and I really appreciate you doing this for us tonight. So thanks. God bless you, man.
Thank you.
Take care. Gentlemen, thank you so much. Coach Nick Saban and Todd Blackledge joining us on our Zoom setup tonight here on the Nick Saban Show. And, of course, the coach will be with us next Thursday and the Thursday thereafter, and so on as we do it on the Zoom hookup throughout the course of the season, until potentially maybe the coach will be able to join us here in person at Baumhauer's Victory Grill.